This is another edition of Livestream. My name is Jürgen Steinmetz in Honolulu, Hawaii. Today we're going to Nigeria. We're going to Africa to attend the second ministerial roundtable organized by the African Tourism Board and moderated by Dr. Taleb Rifai, who was also the Secretary-General for the United Nations World Tourism Organization for 7 years, and it's now patron of the organization leading the Project Hope initiative. Speaker today is the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture in Nigeria. His portfolio also includes tourism, His Excellency Alhaj Lai Mohammed. Nigeria, of course, is one of the economic powerhouses in Africa, and the minister is realizing that tourism is only a small part of the overall income or currency earner for Nigeria. However, he outlines the importance of the business, specifically together with the fashion industry, the music industry, and the interconnectivity with the rest of Africa and the world. Please listen to the minister and questions by Dr. Rifai and another short summary by Minister Mohammed.
I have 3 issues to discuss with you. You could always start by asking questions to either Afro Champions or WHO or Boeing, or you could go directly into the issues that we are discussing now, which is basically how can global organizations help you towards your country for recovery. That's number one. I have a theory about this. I think that this pandemic has brought down all international organizations. Each country is acting on its own somehow. Much of the international organizations have lost their zest. The EU now is struggling. Even the UN is struggling. The EU is struggling. The Arab League is struggling. So we're down to basics now. Each country is working on its own bilateral. But can we still do something as international organizations or not? That's my first question. My second question is, what are your challenges according to you? You want to name 3 of them. Could you please try to write them down? My third question is, if you could achieve one thing while you're in office, what would it be? Which one of the 3 is that? Thank you so much. Let me start with Minister. So much, Minister. Now we go to another proud minister, Mr. Mohammed from Nigeria. I know you very well. Mr. Mohammed is one of the best ministers I have worked with. I'm sorry to say this in front of everybody else. He's a very good man, very patriotic, very Nigerian and very African. Minister, if I would ask you about your 3 challenges, what would you say?
Thank you very much, Dr. Rifai, for those very kind words.
I mean them, you know that.
Yes, I must apologize that I came rather late. Every Wednesday, the Federal Executive Council meets, and as the Minister of Information and Culture, I must stay to the end to coordinate the press briefing at the end of the Federal Executive Council meeting. That's why I couldn't attend earlier. So
we'll make sure we'll not make it next Wednesday. Anytime on Wednesday from now on.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Rifai. What are the challenges we're facing in tourism? In tourism, especially as a result of the pandemic. Dr. Rifai, as you know, though tourism contributes only about 2% to the GDP of the country, but that 2% is huge in terms of employment in particular, and in terms of even numbers. Unlike the traditional tourism countries, we are not too strong in the area of destination tourism, in terms of lakes, in terms of leisure park. But when you look at our creative industry as a whole, especially you look at our hospitality industry, you look at our music, you look at our film, you look at our fashion, you look at our beauty and hair care industry, all these actually things that we promote, and this is why tourists do come to Nigeria. Regrettably, the most hit sector of this of the economy happens to be the creative industry because of social distancing, because of inability to travel, because people can't, musicians can't have concerts, cinema houses are not yet to reopen, and so we feel the impact of this pandemic very severely in the tourism industry. But I'd rather talk more about the creative industry as a whole. Yes, it's true we have succeeded in opening our domestic air service, and on the 5th of this month, which is exactly in 3 days' time, we'll be opening the international flights to Nigeria. But as has been rightly put by my colleague from Tanzania, opening our own air to open our space to international flights would not on its own be sufficient, because the entire world is so interrelated that the protocol that is being implemented in any other part of the country, any other part of the world, is bound to affect the inflow and outflow of tourists. So it's not enough that we have opened our airspace to international flights. The challenge we face now is that even by our own protocol here, even those who are coming into the country, they have to subject themselves to very strict and stringent protocol. For instance, what we have put in place, unfortunately, I'm also a member of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, is that any visitor into Nigeria must first test negative before he comes in. In addition, the visitor, whether Nigerian or tourist, must apply online and pay online for another COVID test, which he must take on the 8th or 14th day on arrival in Nigeria, which means that the tourist or the visitor comes in and he has to stay for about 7 days in self-isolation before he can proceed to do anything. This is a very, very big
discouraging
to business.
Discouraging.
Yeah, very discouraging, sir. A big impediment to tourism. It's quite worrisome. But again, the thing about COVID-19 is not just about protecting yourself, but you also have to protect and be responsible to other people. We're looking at the best method to cut down the protocol at the same time as not to endanger lives. I think the real tragedy of this pandemic is that it has put every country in a very tight position. You have to balance lives with livelihood, and they're both very important. Another challenge which we are facing in Nigeria in particular is that since there is no known vaccine today, the only approach to contain this pandemic is what we call the non-pharmaceutical intervention, which is largely advocacy, community mobilization. We believe that the community is not responding and is not collaborating well enough with government. At the beginning, the COVID-19 was imported into Nigeria. And the federal government took immediate measures to put very strict and stringent measures at our airports to try and stop the importation. But unfortunately, because of the lack of cooperation, it became a community spread, and that is, to me, probably the most difficult, part of the pandemic to handle, because the community spread, tracking becomes very, very difficult. But we still continue with our social, engagement, mobilization, and what we are doing now is to actually find champions in faith leaders, in political leaders, national leaders, the trade unions, the labor organization, the students. As long as we all can, contain the spread of the pandemic and prevent our hospital, our healthcare system from being overwhelmed, and we'll be able to contain the spread and very soon be able to open the entire economy. But having said that, the federal government also took certain decisions to try and limit the impact of the pandemic, especially on our industry. I would say on the economy, entirely, but more on our industry. Because when we did the baseline, because the first thing I did was to set up a committee to look into the impact of this COVID-19 on the entire creative industry, especially the tourism industry. And that's when I began to realize the huge contribution of this industry to the economy. Because, for instance, the hospitality and tourism industry in Nigeria employs about 4 million people and have a revenue of close to 1.2 trillion naira. And it's been very badly affected. So one of the things the federal government did was to see how they could talk to banks, especially the central bank, to provide certain palliatives to this industry. And in particular, we've been advising the hospitality industry not to retrench staff, to retain staff, because we believe that this is just a passing phase. And with the resilience of this industry, we know that we're able to overcome, the temporary setback. I think another challenge that the industry, the tourism industry, is facing is in the fact that our tourism industry it relies heavily on the creative, largely our musicians and our filmmakers. In the last 3-4 months, they've not been able to hold concerts, neither have they been able to go out to hold concerts in Nigeria. Film production has also been on the decline, so is also distribution. And it's only, we hope that the next 1 week or so, we'll be able to open our cinemas, because the Cinema Employers Association is certain protocol that will help us, that will be able to contain the pandemic. So by and large, the pandemic has been very severe and very harsh on the tourism industry in general, but the government is reaching out through the central bank, through palliatives, through intervention, to cushion the effect of the pandemic. And recently, I just set up an implementation committee to look into the findings and see how government can actually intervene, probably in the area of guaranteeing the salaries of certain basic workers in the industry. But the government very, very much appreciates the fact that the industry is one of the most severely impacted, because even the government admits that after agriculture, that industry employs the largest number of people. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much, Minister. Thanks from South Africa. Before we do that, may I just present something, Ms. Malan, so that you would also help you make your intervention as comprehensive as possible. Minister from Tanzania, Minister from Nigeria.
I'm afraid, sir.
Yes.
Fine. I don't know whether it's just for my colleagues to know exactly what we do in the area, specific things we've done in the area of financing.
Yes.
Because what we did was that we unlocked available funds in special accounts to create about 500 billion naira intervention fund. And the government also amended the Finance Act and passed the Finance Act of 2020 in support of the micro, small and medium enterprise, because they are these are the people that are most hit by the pandemic, people who depend on daily takings for their survival. And the government also, did what we call the tax resolution and settlement, set up a tax resolution and settlement unit, and we extended deadlines and suspended penalties for filing tax returns. The government also, in particular, supported strategic industries affected by the pandemic, especially the aviation, the hospitality, and the road transport sectors, by providing, grants.
How accessible were these grants and loans? How easy was it to?
What we did was that the government set up what is called the Economic Sustainability Plan, and in that plan, each minister was interviewed and asked what did they think that was going to help, the industry. And then let me give you an example with the transport, for instance. In the transport section, we made these grants so that these grants will make it available for the transport owners to access, banks at a very small, interest loan to procure and provide and to procure, vehicles, because we still depend very largely on the on road transportation, especially for domestic movement. Now, the aviation industry, if I'm correct, is giving a lump sum to bail out and support most of the some of the industry operators who have, especially the local airlines, who have had to park their planes for a long time and who might find it difficult to undergo C checks or D checks, as the case may be. And I believe the central bank and the various ministry are working out, this plan. In my own ministry, for instance, as you know, it also combines, information and broadcasting. Now, we realize that broadcasting, for us, the DSO, which is switch over, is a very important part of tourism. And we realized that the first thing we did to help the broadcasters was to waive 2 months, fees that they ought to pay to the Broadcasting Commission. But when we found that the pandemic was not, going immediately, we did what we call a debt forgiveness. We forgave every broadcaster 60% of their debts, where they are able to pay within a limited period, and also slash the renewal fees by 30%. Because for us, you see, we did this because in Nigeria, the broadcast industry contributes heavily through music and through the films to our tourism sector. So these are some of the things that the government has done. And then we also targeted tariff reduction and trade finance facilities to support strategic, areas. So I believe that the government is quite aware that unless there's there's this intervention, in the key sectors, it will lead to a lot of redundancy, unemployment, and that will also lead to social unrest, which could lead to political instability. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This was another edition of Livestream.travel. We hope to see you next time. Signing off from Honolulu, Hawaii. My name is Jürgen Steinmetz.